I'm David Marsh. Welcome to Exploring the Human Journey.
Exploring the Human Journey.
Hi and welcome. I'm so glad you joined us. Today is going to be such a fun episode. I have Ina Laughing Winds Mlekush on set in person with us today. Now, she is my personal coach in the Chuluaqui Quodoushka workshop. She's also a marriage relationship sex counselor, and I can't wait for you to hear all of the cool things about it. Recently, I spent some time with Ina, and we made this great video.
As a Chuluaqui Quodoushka teacher, there are only about 14 of us who are certified because it takes 20 plus years to have the complete certification to do this, and it is through the Deer Tribe Métis Medicine Society, and this is a shamanic path of spiritual knowledge. The Quodoushka covers 8 different expressions from martial arts, self-defense, often learning quantum physics about how our planet was created. What is our relationship on this planet with the mineral, the plant, the animal, and the human worlds? So we have 4 levels that we teach. I teach level 1, 2, and 3. I'm one of the senior teachers. Level 1 teaches about how we can heal ourselves. And healing ourselves doesn't mean anything is wrong. It means how can we become more comfortable and more free in our spiritual sexuality expression. Level 2 focuses more on relationship, male, female, basic instinctual differences. And when we understand these differences, we fit together perfectly. It's how Great Spirit created us. And there's beautiful ceremonies, and there are exercises we do in every single workshop. And there's also manuals such as this one. This is level 1, and you can see there's quite a bit of knowledge. And we have level 2 and 3. Level 3 takes us into sexual magic, where we actually can use our sexual life force energy and set an intent for the healing of ourselves or for the healing of our planet. These were teachings that were taught to the young men and women of the tribe as they went through puberty and as they became more sexually conscious. They were trained. Unlike in our culture, where it's the back seat, or you find the magazine, or the parents are too shy to talk to their children about how to be respectful of their own bodies, how to be loving and respectful of a partner's body, how to make love. It's an unconditional loving of oneself and giving oneself to another in that unconditional way. So all spirituality, all sexuality are interwoven to make this beautiful blanket that awakens us. So the Quodoushka teachings have a full body of knowledge that helps us to be a better human being, to be more sacred, and to respect the mineral, the plant, the animal, the human, and the spirit worlds.
Ina, that was fun.
That's great.
We spent time together. We learned about the Quodoushka. We learned about your work. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's really in my heart to do it.
Yeah. So you were someone that I reached out to about a year ago on the phone, and I had some questions about the workshop and some questions about relationship. You were very kind. You spent a long time on the phone with us, with sweet Lady Gail and myself, and you gave us some information, kind of some counseling, some advice. You are a marriage relationship sex counselor. Give presence to the work that you do.
Well, first of all, I say the marriage is what everyone understands.
Yeah.
Relationship is that nowadays is that people are in relationship without getting married. They're in alternative lifestyles. They may have same-sex partners. So relationship becomes the umbrella of all that I'm very comfortable in working with. Yeah. And I'm also a certified American Association Sexual Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, certified through ASEC as a sex counselor. So anytime that a relationship is having challenges, inevitably it affects their ability to enjoy their sex life with each other. So having both of those trainings, it really makes for a good good package in
Yeah.
being able to help people.
Yeah. And sexuality and spirituality are so closely linked. That's one thing I really took away from the work that you've done is sexuality and spirituality are so important. And if you don't have one, then it's going to be quite difficult to have the other. Give presence to the human sexuality, the spiritual sexuality that we as beings have.
Well, I've had a lot of people say when I've stated spiritual sexuality, they say, what do you mean? There is sex and sexuality and enjoying it and having babies. And then there's the, going to church and religion, and that the two are separate.
Yeah.
And that's actually what our culture has created.
Yes.
It's what our government has created, is a separation.
Yep.
When the reality is Great Spirit, Wakantanka, God, created the human being. The soul is within us. And when we make love, when we share ourselves intimately, it is our soul rejoicing. And that is very spiritual.
Yeah.
So you actually cannot separate spirituality and sexuality, though everyone has tried to do it. And my teacher, Thunder Strikes, who I studied, my mentor for over 36 years, and he introduced the Chuluaqui Quodoushka teachings to the world. He used to teasingly say, when many of us are in the throes of coming close to the orgasm, we don't say, oh God, I'm leaving. Oh God, I'm going. We say, oh God, I'm coming. And that is coming not just in the releasing of fluid, but it actually is a coming into a spiritual state of being that everything else disappears. Everything, our pain, our suffering, our worry, it doesn't exist. And for those few moments, and through the Chuluaqui Quodoushka teachings, it could be longer than a few moments with training, that we are one with the everything. We are a part of the everything. We're not alone. We're not lonely. It's a very powerful place to heal ourselves.
Oh, I love it. The idea of holiness and purity was put into me at such a young age, and I was taught that sexuality was negative. It had a bad context outside of marriage. So I remember hearing, being in a church youth group and hearing a youth pastor say, sex is amazing. I can't wait till you get married to have sex. But outside of sex, ooh, it's the worst thing. It's awful. It's sinful. And you can't go to heaven and be with God if you're having sex. And I was like, oh my God. So it was given to me like, it could be a good thing, but it's really not unless you do it in this certain box. And so it was kind of contextualized with fear.
Absolutely.
So I met Sweet Lady Gail when I was 17 years old. Well, you know what happens when boys and girls get together? Sometimes they get really intimate. And in that space of sexuality, I had shame and guilt that came over me. And then I transferred that to her. I'm like, you should be in the same belief system. And we decided that we couldn't live in shame and guilt. So we had to get out of shame and guilt. So we got married. Yeah. So we put on a wedding ring and we were in marital bliss until that ring served as a symbol of obligation and a symbol of like, you have to do this because it was shame and guilt. So your work is so good. When I took the workshop, we'll get into the workshop more, you allowed me to understand that shame and guilt is not part of sexuality. That is the man-made construct.
So you just downloaded a lot. First of all, guilt, blame, and shame are totally useless emotions across the board.
Don't need them.
Across the board.
Yeah,
we can have
them.
Remorse because remorse means we feel bad about something we did and we can correct it. Guilt, blame, and shame are emotions that allow us to be manipulated and controlled. So that's one thing. So let go of that. Now, what you were indoctrinated into, that being born in sin, the act of sex is an act of sin. Who created that? I mean, our genitalia are an organ. You've got an organ, I have an organ. So is the liver, so is the kidney, so is the heart, so is the lungs. Every organ in our body develops naturally in the womb, and when we are born, we continue to grow, and everything grows and matures, and we're supposed to use everything. There is no little clip on our lungs that says you cannot use it until you're married. It'll be in sin if your kidneys work until you're married.
So good.
It's ridiculous.
So
I mean,
good.
common sense. Let's use common sense. So our genitals are no different than any other organ in our body.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that when we start maturing and we go through puberty, there is a natural drive to make love, to connect. The problem with our culture and many cultures now around the world is there's no training, there's no rites of passage, there's no initiation of the young man and the young woman of teaching them how sacred their bodies are. And when they choose to be with another in that intimacy, they do it respectfully and they don't do it lightly. They do it out of what's natural, but they also have had training, which is no longer available, especially at the younger age.
Yeah.
And parents don't teach children anymore, or the ones who do, they do the best they can, but how much education did they have? So
I like the way you said it was the backseat education or the magazine education.
Yeah, and the exploring, and then depending upon what your culture is, what part of the world, as to, again, the social indoctrination, the cultural indoctrination, what your economic status is, all of that influences how a young man or a young woman is going to move forward. And because young women develop faster than young men, there's, I'm sure a lot of your women listening to this, if you'll remember, go back to like elementary school or junior high, and when you had a boyfriend and you were all, you hold hands, we would try on your last name. What does the last name sound like with my name? What would our children look like? That's where little girls go to very quickly, because our DNA from cave woman, and we haven't changed that much, is to nurture and please. Now for you boys, Great Spirit made you beautifully with this wonderful package that wants to plant its seeds and wants to procreate and produce people, the planet.
Ta-da!
So, yes, and that's what makes you feel a man.
Yes.
Yes, and so your desire at a very young age, especially when you start ejaculating, is to be able to make love, and then you wonder, what would it be like to make love to this woman or this girl or this girl or that girl? And that's how God made you. That it's natural to make sure caveman, when he was young, went and you're the bumblebee and you are pollinating the flowers so we could people the planet.
Yeah.
So of course there's a level of consciousness that comes in with maturity, that comes in with social development. And we've lost the rites of passages that used to help train the young men and young women. Now, not everyone, because like in the Jewish tradition, there is the honoring of the young men and the young women. But I don't know if there is sexuality taught with that and being sexually responsible and what that looks like. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you do not engage sexually. It means you're sexually responsible. You don't have license to do whatever you want with whomever you want.
Yeah, I like that you give presence to that. And somewhere along this path, you were a young person that had a context. Were you raised in a religious context, or were you aware of spirituality at a young age?
Well, I was raised in a Jewish family. Both my mother and father were Jewish, but we were not strict. It was more the Jewish culture, the food, and the values of education being important. My parents actually were very open, and they actually studied metaphysics.
Oh, wow.
And then as I was in high school, I needed something. My mother came into the bedroom and saw me on my knees praying. And she said, you can pray. You don't have to be down on your knees. And she's saying, I told her, well, I feel like it might work better. And she said, okay, we need to start attending. So we started attending a metaphysical church, which was Christian based.
Oh.
And in that process, with aging and my first year in college and then coming back around, I studied to become a healing practitioner, and I became a metaphysical minister. That's where they taught meditation and psychic development and the psychic fairs and positive thinking and being responsible. And I found a limitation to that. They dealt with the heart chakra on up.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, what about the first three chakras? There's a lot of energy going on down there.
Yeah.
And I was actually a very highly sexual young woman, very driving, as most young people are, if they're going to be honest. So
I remember a lot of energy right in this area when I was in those years.
Oh, yeah.
And yesterday, too. It's still there.
That's wonderful. Yay.
Just saying.
Yeah, very important. So in my process, many of us are seekers. So I studied a bit of Nishi and Daisho Buddhism. And I was looking for a spiritual path. I was looking for what's called a path with heart. And in my master's program, getting my degree in transpersonal psychology, because I was going toward being a marriage, family, child counselor, in an external program.
It was marriage, family.
Oh, yeah.
Then it went marriage, sex. Okay, I see it.
Yeah. Well, they all, if you want a happy family, if you want a happy marriage, you got to deal with sexuality.
Absolutely.
So think of a wheel. Think of just a bicycle wheel.
Okay.
And there's the hub and there are the spokes. So the spokes are emotional, mental, physical, spiritual. We can work on ourselves in either one of those categories. Emotionally, you can work on yourself, but physically be out of shape. Mentally, you can be a genius, and most who are geniuses are not very socially adept. You can be very spiritual, but that doesn't mean that you're very mental or intelligent, nor does it mean you're in shape. So we can work on any one of the outer spokes without affecting the others.
Oh, okay.
In the center, in the hub, is our sexuality. So if your sexuality is off, if your sexual needs aren't being met, if your intimacy needs aren't being met, it torques the spokes so that it starts affecting how you feel about yourself emotionally, how you feel about your partner. It affects physically. It affects your mental state. When an individual is not getting their, I'm saying intimacy and sexual needs met, they can be grouchy bear. Girl or boy, grouchy
Indeed.
bear. And then they get laid and everyone says, you must have gotten laid. You've got a big smile on your face. You're relaxed.
I feel amazing.
So most people are comfortable, relatively speaking, working on themselves emotionally and mentally. That's first. Then they will start maybe physically, working out, eating properly, making sure that this temple that the soul lives in, spiritually oftentimes is kind of the last thing, because after all, we have to work, we have to raise our kids, we're busy. I don't have time they might go to church, but I don't know how spiritual they are.
Yeah.
Because prayer is something that needs to take place multiple times a day.
Yep.
We are in relationship all the time.
Yep.
Sex, I have, in my marriage practice, I have 50, 60-year-olds, and they're coming to me because their sex life has died, or it hasn't died, and they want to learn how to have female ejaculation. But when they look at each other, they say, well, I know exactly what that look means. And, well, I know what she's going to say. And then I look at them, I say, so you know so much about each other. How come you're in here working with me as a marriage counselor?
Yes.
I said, how about we start with, you actually don't know each other at all anymore. You've been living together for years, but you've stopped listening and you've stopped communicating and you've stopped being intimate, let alone sexual.
Yep.
Because sometimes stopping the actual act of intercourse and sexuality happens. It could be aging, it could be a loss of testosterone for the man, so difficulties with erections, or the woman, menopause, and so the vaginal walls become dry. All of those things can be dealt with in a number of ways. One, if you don't use it, you lose it. Lubricants and bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. But when everything stops and something else stops, there's a intimacy that stops, and and intimacy never has to stop. And some form of sexual play, even if it isn't the genitals because of aging issues or medical issues, fingers still work, kissing still works, caressing the body, snuggling, breathing. The Quodoushka workshops teach you how to breathe your body into a very heightened orgastic state.
Yes.
And people just close it off altogether because that's what they've been trained from their religions.
Yep. Yeah, that box of religion holds you in that fear. And that's one thing that exploring the human journey is about, is letting go of that fear and embracing the possibility of what could be.
And that's the box you broke out of.
I am in the constant quest to let go of that fear and to move forward in consciousness and enjoy life rather than feel like I have to be a prisoner to my circumstances.
Right.
And part of that is the work that you do in the spiritual sexuality. And sacred sexuality is a term that has kind of been new to me, but this is something you've been doing for years, is the sacred sexuality. And so people find you, they find your work, they come to you. What are some of the issues that people are working through? You kind of probably see some commonalities in this.
Well, first of all, I work with couples. And I do a lot of work with men who are dealing with sexual challenges. I do work with women. When I work with a couple, doing couple counseling, sometimes out of the person who comes to me, the whole couple does not come to me.
Oh.
One of the partners refuses to. It's your problem.
Can you fix my partner?
Well, or it's their problem. It's not theirs. You know, it's her problem. It's not mine. You fix her or you fix him. And I say, fine. Send them in. And so I'll work with the one, because if the one person learns and educates and changes, the other partner has to change. Now, here's the key. If the other partner refuses to grow and evolve and to change, well, then I am not only a marriage counselor, but I'm a divorce counselor. How can you separate with dignity and respect and actually still loving each other, realizing one person's outgrowing the other, or the river of life is taking you in separate directions? Most people do not separate when they can still be respectful. They wait till they hate each other. And and then they tear each other apart, and the lawyers get in, and you're paying the lawyers all this money, but they really needed to separate much sooner. So I either help couples stay together or separate with dignity.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
Well, most people don't. It's so hard to separate and to speak your truth when you don't hate each other.
Well, I like that you give presence to maybe you shouldn't stay together. And I like that, because it's not like, well, to fix it, you have to stay together. Maybe they're at a place where they don't have to. Maybe they're at a place where they realize, we really want to be together and we just didn't know. And you give that clarity.
And they're always that choice. And so by even bringing up the subject, all of a sudden, looking at it, I go, well, how about we commit 3 months and you really work your butt off to make this thing work. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. You know, I'm going to give you ideas. Now, are you going to go home and use them or not? And speaking the truth. So the communication is huge when couples or individuals come to me. A breakdown of communication. Not only that, most couples, I do so much work on educating male, female, basic instinctual differences. Men and women talk differently. We think differently.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Grandfather's son is different than grandmother earth. And we need that. Because if the earth did not have the sun ejaculating, entering deep into her womb, this would be a frozen planet. Her magma would not stay hot and would not keep this planet living and growing with mineral, plant, animal. This is, even scientists have finally caught up with the ancient Native Americans who said, Grandmother Earth, it's a living organism. And some traditions say Mother Earth. So
I love the way that you had given presence to that in the workshop. You talked about grandfather, son, ejaculating in the light, and grandmother Earth receiving that. Oh, such a beautiful picture of working together. So beautiful.
So grandfather, son, masculine needs the woman to receive that, so we can take it and then birth your dreams, birth what it is. And that's part of what we do as women. In our womb, we have space. We hold space, like we're the ocean and you are the ocean liner, you know, with direction. So men have direction, and it's, you plan the future, you create so that you provide for us, you protect us, and it's your spark energy going out. And That's an outward energy. Our energy is inward, the feminine, the goddess, the receptive, for us to receive you. So part of the problem in today's culture is that women and men, to order to have a economic base, women have to work now full time to be able to have what we used to have with one person working.
Yeah.
And so who takes care of the children? Who raises them with quality? Women are working, and in a man's field, they're going to pick up their masculine energy to get the job done.
Yeah.
Then when we come home, we forget to get on our frills. We forget to put the lace on. We stay in our masculine energy. We may look beautiful, but we are in competition with you men.
Oh.
And a man, I mean, men don't ask other men out unless they're gay, right?
Yeah.
Heterosexual men don't ask other. And if I stay in my masculine, then we start warring at home.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that if you get home first, you can't start cooking. We're not talking about
Understood.
the division of power,
Yep.
the division of getting things done. But our culture has almost forced women to get into their masculine and stay there.
Yeah. It's almost like two people that become buddies rather than lovers.
Oh, and that's just death to a relationship. And unless there is a medical reason, unless there's an aging issue, and you love each other dearly, and you sleep nude, and you cuddle, and you snuggle, and the intimacy is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As long as there's intimacy, there may be reasons why there's not the actual intercourse, but that doesn't mean that you still can't give each other sexual pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
So just to differentiate that.
Yeah.
But when you're young and vibrantly healthy, and okay, I'm 70. I'm still very vibrantly sexual. So age is not the determination of when you
Indeed.
stop wanting to be sexual. And to stop being sexual, they've done scientific research, and they have proven that the average American has like 56 orgasms a year.
Whoa.
Not many. That's not many.
You mean in a week?
No.
Oh,
I mean,
okay. Well,
in
I was
a year.
just clarifying.
56 orgasms in a year.
That's not enough.
And they said if they double that, having 112 in a year, they will actually reduce their age by 1.5 years.
Wow.
And the more orgasms you have, the more you reduce your aging.
So then in Earth years, I should be about 22 right now.
Yeah, well,
All right.
you are, aren't you?
Hi. Cock-a-doodle-doo.
That's wonderful.
I've learned so much from the workshops I took. We did
Yeah.
Quodoushka 1 and 2 with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I teasingly joke with Sweet Lady Gail, I learned 952 things. And every time you say something, I'm like, okay, that was number 72. Okay, that was number 157. You have input so much wisdom in just the short amount of time. I know that you're a prolific author and you do a lot of writing. Before I forget, give presence to some of the authorship that you've done.
Okay. Well, I do write articles for a local magazine I have for the last 10 years. And the magazine now is Quest TV. And I talk about relationship and spiritual sexuality and good communication skills. And I've taken many of those articles and we created, this is Improve Your Sex Life and Relationships One Bite at a Time.
Yeah.
So these are the articles. And so one article, everything from Wake Up Girlfriend, Sexless Marriages, Letting Sex Slip Out of Your Life, what men need to know about women and women need to know about men.
Yeah.
So for every one article, there's a bite of wisdom or more than one bite.
Yeah.
And so there is this, and you can get this on my website.
Give presence to your website before I forget.
It is spiritualsexuality.com. Okay.
Yes.
And then there's also a lot of my clients deal with early ejaculation, and I decided to create a DVD addressing early ejaculation and actually showing the techniques that one can learn, that a man can manage his sexual energy so he can maintain his erection for as long as he wants and be able to ejaculate at choice. And so this is Manage Your Sexual Energy, Resolve Early Ejaculation. So this is a DVD and I'm in there doing some of the surrogate work.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I'm going to keep that right here.
Every man at some point in his life ejaculates before he wants to.
Really? Tell me more.
So I don't call it premature ejaculation. Therapists nowadays, there's nothing premature about it. It's just early. It feels wonderful. It feels fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. It's usually because the man has such an emotional connection to the woman, and her fragrance, her taste, everything about her. He is just so loving and impassioned that his body goes, yay! And there's really nothing wrong with it other than he wants to last longer for more pleasure for himself and for her.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I do in my private practice. And I've done a lot of work with men to help them learn how to control their ejaculative response. And I send them home with exercises to do, along with the marriage counseling, the communication, understanding male-female differences, and how we need to communicate differently to each other.
Yep.
So the other thing is, this is called the train station. And I started writing erotica, but educational erotica.
Yeah.
So you read this and you actually are going to learn something. And I talk about the fire breath, which is how to breathe the body into an orgastic state. And the quest that this young man went on, trying to find there's something more to relationships. There's more to sexuality, and the adventures that he goes on is quite yummy.
So sexy time with education.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
And then there's actually a CD that I produced, and it is sounds of erotic talk. And this is to help people get comfortable listening to a couple actually making love, talking to each other during the lovemaking session, and hearing their sounds of pleasure, and there's music in the background. And this is for people who have a difficult time, which is most all of us, of asking for what you want, guiding your partner. Men are not mind readers, nor are women. So the sounds, ooh, that's so nice, honey, right there, yes, please, harder, softer. I didn't do that. I didn't do that for a long part of my life until I studied the Quodoushka teachings. I was like most people. I didn't even have orgasms.
Wow.
And most women don't have orgasms during intercourse. So this CD, you can listen to it as educational, or if you're having a party, you can put it around in the background, especially if you're in an alternative lifestyle. It kind of can kick the energy. So it can be used educationally or a little more fun.
Well, if there's one thing I've learned about you, you're fun.
Oh, well, thank you.
You are a ball of fun, and you take the sexuality and you make it completely natural, and there's no shame or guilt with that. And so I have learned so much just through the workshops. How did you get into the Chuluaqui Quodoushka, the Deer Tribe? Tell me some of the impetus of how that started, because you're a master instructor. You've been doing this for a long time.
Yes. For over about 32 years. Yeah. So in the process of me getting my master's degree, I chose a program where it was not a stationary university, but it was university without walls.
Oh, sure.
And so we went and traveled and actually sat with teachers for a weekend.
Oh, wow. And
one of those teachers I did, it was with Joan Halifax, who's a cultural anthropologist, R.D. Lang, who also is a psychologist, very well known for the work that he did. And then my teacher-to-be walked in and joined Harley Swiftier, and he had kind of this interesting entourage of people. And he walked in, and they knew him, and they welcomed him in. And so I sat in this day-long symposium listening to these three amazing people. And when I listened to Swiftier, also known as Thunderstrike, speak, my body resonated. I knew he was speaking truth. I'd been studying metaphysics. I'd been studying Nichiren Daisho Buddhism. I was raised Jewish. I had become a master hypnotherapist. I was hearing a man talk about everything. Nothing was
Wow.
nothing was off the table.
Taking puzzle pieces and putting them together then.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so I went up to him on a break and said, I would love to learn this shamanic way. So he suggested I go sit out in the woods and meditate, and then that was not the answer I wanted. So at the end of the workshop, I said, thank you for that. Where do you live? I want to come study with you.
Yeah.
And he said, well, that's when we all lived in California. He lived in La Cañada. I was it was in Southern California, like Orange County. I drove 50 miles one way to get to his teachings.
Wow.
And that was 36 years ago. And it's just been in the last 4 years that he stepped out and crossed onto the other side.
Wow.
But his knowledge base was unending and based from the ancient twisted hairs coming out of the Mayan and Toltec. And so in the process of studying with him, he was mandated by his elder council to take this Chuluaqui, Quodoushka, body of sacred sexuality teachings and somehow make it palatable for a modern audience because they said, we were so separated from our sexuality and our spirituality that to help the planet overall, we needed to know that we could access God directly through our sexual energy, through breathing ourselves into a higher state of consciousness. So there were two main teachers that were working with him, and I was a brand new apprentice.
Ooh, this new exciting thing, yeah.
Right. So Liz and Justin, and Liz was a medical doctor, and she said, we have to take this body of knowledge and make it into a workshop. We have to bring it out to doctors. We need to teach it. No one has this knowledge. Yeah. No one
when
has
you hear
this
the
knowledge.
Information, you become an evangelist for the Chuluaqui Quodoushka teachings. You're like, everybody needs it. And so even in 2018, when I took it, it's still like, everybody needs this.
Yeah. So, and these workshops, we don't market them. We don't publicize them. They're not, we don't do commercials on them. It's word of mouth around the world, word of mouth.
Yep.
And these are the teachings that used to be taught to the young men and women as we began with this, who entered into puberty. They would do a vision quest. The young men would do the vision quest outward. The young women maybe would go into a sacred kiva, connect to the womb of grandmother. They did seeking who they were going to be when they became mature adults. And then part of that rites of passage was to have them work with elders who were trained in the Chuluaqui Quodoushka to give them the teachings. There's 5 types of orgasms, and what are they? And how do you achieve them? There's 5 levels of orgasm. What happens at each of those levels? Why do you want to experience them? There's our relationship to the mineral, the plant, the animal, the human world, and all of those are interconnected. They're all a part of the grid work, except us, because we've been given free will.
Yeah.
Because we have free will, we separate ourselves, and that's why we feel alone or disconnected. So we have to consciously connect ourselves to this planet. So the teachings of Chuluaqui Quodoushka are much more than sex and have to do with intercourse. They have to do with who we are as a sacred sexual human being on this planet, in relationship to everything on this planet, so that we can be spiritually accountable and take responsibility, assume authority, that we have the free will, and how are we going to treat this grandmother planet and each other.
Yeah. Oh, so good. The most profound shift that I got from the Quodoushka 1 workshop was letting go of the shame and the guilt. And Sweet Lady Gail and I attended this, and we had this revelation that our relationship had been founded on shame and guilt.
Yes.
And the last day, I sent you a text message early in the morning. I'm like, hey, Gail and I were talking. We have an idea. Could we take our rings? And I can't even get my ring off because my finger's all fat right now. But we said, can we take our rings and have you kind of bless them and then kind of have because we knew you were a metaphysical minister, and we didn't want to re-get married and recommit our vows as they were. We wanted to kind of transmute that shame and guilt, and we wanted to say, can we put new energy behind this? Can we now enter into a relationship agreement that said, we don't want to be married out of obligation, but we want to be in relationship out of choice? And you said, yeah. And then, so beautiful, you and Michael, the two instructors, you made a sacred space for us and allowed us to be able to have the opportunity to do this in front of everyone. And you blessed them, you did ceremony over it, and you spoke very kind words, and you gave us the space to be into a relationship of love and choice with each other. And I honor you. Thank you for that.
It was the most beautiful thing to witness and to see how the two of you grew and evolved, and you didn't have to divorce, and you didn't have to be negative to each other, and you were challenged, and it was difficult, and you kept coming back, and taking it to the next level of spiritual consciousness.
Yeah.
And you entered into a bonding ceremony, which is different than a marriage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I was given that marriage construct as, one man and one woman before God until death do you part. And I was like, oh boy, the energy was more of an obligation, and it becomes something that you feel like, I love this person, but boy, the energy of it is just so much different than, I choose this person.
Every day.
Yeah.
And we have to choose every day. Like my husband and I are married, and doesn't mean we don't have our ups and downs, and there are times we love each other but don't like each other.
Sure.
And then the maturity of the communication, let's get to the cause, not the symptom. And sometimes the symptom is low blood sugar, it's money stress. It's things that really we fight over some of the stupidest things. And then it can become big, and I go, this is so dumb. What is this really about?
Yep.
And there's a couple of months out of the year that we tend to go into conflict, and it has to do with when our birthdays change.
Yep.
And then we move into, for 2 months, a different energetic between his birthday and my birthday. There's so much knowledge in this path.
Yep.
So that once you actually attend a Quodoushka workshop, a lot of people might want to then do sweat lodges or attend Red Lodge, which is our training. It's like 5 weekends over a year. And one of those is a 4-day where we go off to our land, and there's vision quests and ceremony where we can get back to our relationship to spirit. And that is something that's so important. So when I do marriage counseling, I will ask my clients, have you prayed over this?
Oh.
This is not about going to church. Have you actually prayed for a solution to this? Have you prayed for the clarity that you need? And the other thing is, so what are you trying to teach yourself? Because so often when we enter into counseling, we're upset at the other person.
Yeah.
And there's no solutions. If you could have done the solutions, you would have. You tried for a year, for 2 years. And finally, when you're looking at maybe breaking up, then you come and say, we need a miracle. Really
so you've
think
got
about
this
it.
shattered vessel you're trying to piece back with duct tape and glue,
Well, and I work with them together first and then separately. Because as honest as people will be together, separately, they're not concerned about hurting the partner's feelings. So now I'm going to get the real truth. And sometimes the real truth is, I don't know if I have any energy to put toward making this relationship work. And so, well, what are you trying to teach yourself at this point? Have you learned it? If you commit to 3 months of really dedicated work, then you'll be clear at the end of that to know if you have you made any headway? Is there enough love, enough change that you can stay together? Or do you realize really clearly it's over? So that marriage and working separately and together is vitally important.
Yep. The construct of marriage gives us health insurance, gives us the right to see a loved one in a hospital. So, it gives us an IRS benefit. So there are some political and some business reasons.
Sure.
But man, if you're just going to be married because of a religious or political or business construct, there's so much more depth of a relationship when you do it out of choice. And you're probably seeing the paradigm where less people are getting married and they're more choosing to be in a relationship. And then I love your work because you give presence to alternative lifestyles, and it's not shame and guilt. You're like, well, maybe you're in a triad where there's two of the same sex and opposite sex, or maybe you're in a gay relationship, or maybe you're ambisexual where you can live in either a straight or a gay situation.
So I'm going to bring a little clarity to that. Thank you for bringing it, because there's 5 different kinds of relationships. Okay, so one of them is monogamy, traditional, and the other is a marriage that is open. That doesn't mean that they are swingers. They might be. It may be that they have agreements with how they're going to maybe be with other people, be sexual with others. Maybe before they are sexual with anyone else, they first come home, they meet each other, they have dinner, So there's the traditional, and then there's opening it. Then there is what's called open paired sharing. This is maybe 2 or 3 couples choose to get together, and they are sexual with each other, no one else, and they've all tested. Maybe they want to buy land together. A few of them decide who's going to stay home to raise the children, who's going to work, and their monies are together. And if when it was bigger, it was called a commune. But this is not a big event, and this is not a free-for-all. This is people who, and within that, they might be heterosexual, or there may be some bisexuality. I'll explain ambisexuality in a moment. There's also celibacy, which is different than abstinence.
Oh, I love that. That was number 257 I learned from you.
So celibacy means that we celebrate ourselves. I prefer self-pleasuring to masturbation, and so
it's different energy, right?
We self-love, and we explore our bodies.
Masturbation feels so angry, or self-pleasuring feels so kind.
It does. Masturbation is like I'm pounding my pot. The women get the vibrator out. How fast can I get off? No, you're training yourself into early ejaculation when you go fast. Women, no man's tongue can beat a vibrator. He doesn't have the watts. So, if you want to use a vibrator, some of the time, that's fine. Men, if you're short of time and you need to just get it off, fine. But for the most part, 20 minutes. Self-pleasuring should be 20 to 30 minutes. And it should be luxuriating in your body and experiencing and feeling and building and backing off and building and having these amazing orgasms with yourself. Abstinence means you don't touch it. You draw a line, you cut it out, it's bad, you don't like it. And sometimes that happens as a result of sexual rape or abuse, misuse. So that has to be healed. And 1 out of every 3 women, if not 1 out of every 2, has had some kind of sexual abuse, molestation, rape. And men, it's not talked about, but men also have been raped and molested. And so that's coming to the foreground more. So in the relationship wheel, you can also be in the triad, as you said, 2 men, 1 woman, 2 women, 1 man. This is not a menage a trois where you occasionally kind of play. This is you live together. You're making decisions together. You vacation together. You share your monies together, however that looks. And then in the center is dating. And openly, honestly, to say, I am dating more than one person. I am being sexual with more than one person. Therefore, safe sex practices need to take place. Condoms must be used. Now, you used a term called ambisexual. So there's different types of sexual choices. There's heterosexual, which we all know. Ambisexual means you're basically heterosexual, and given the right circumstances, you're fine making love to same sex. You wouldn't necessarily live with them. Your choice of living and marrying would be heterosexual. But usually with ambi, the opposite sex person is present. So it'd be myself, my husband, and then maybe another man that I would enjoy, or another woman for him, and we're doing this together. Okay, so then there's the, gay or lesbian. Yes,
Leo, we
yes,
see you.
Hi there, baby.
Get down, pal.
So then there is I'm sorry, you can't stay up.
You can't.
So there's the, same sex, and a person chooses that, and they maybe don't choose it for their whole life. This is not a sentence, but maybe they've discovered at some point during their life that they want to explore that. They want to explore same-sex relationship. Now, some individuals, I have some very good friends, and they said right from the get-go, when they were even little kids playing, they were always attracted to same sex. They always played in the male or the female role. That was just what their soul was choosing to experience this lifetime.
Yep.
And none of them did a sex change.
Yep.
None of them changed the body that their soul chose to experience making love same sex in. So because the medical profession can do the operations and the changing, it doesn't mean they should, because we're talking about the soul choosing the gender, and this is not going to be real popular with a lot of people watching this. But the soul chose that gender at 4.5 months to experience whatever it was going to experience in that gender. And in the luminosity, these are other teachings that come out of the sweet medicine Sundance path, where people can do Red Lodge and they can do other teachings. In our aura, our luminosity within mine, there is the masculine aspect. I have a masculine child, I have a masculine warrior, and then I have that spirit. And then the little girl of who I was, who now is behind me, carries all the memory of my past, and the woman is in front of me, and these are inside our luminosity. And we have elder energy that experienced all of my lifetimes, and they are around my center. So if you could actually see into the luminosity, you would see all these configurations. So when an individual actually has a sex change and takes hormones to change their body, nothing in their luminosity changes. And then we wonder why there's suicide. We wonder why they have difficulties after they have done it, because the luminosity does not change. But that doesn't get marketed. That doesn't get put on TV.
It feels like there's so much shame and guilt, like they feel like they need to change a gender, which if they could just be in a space where they felt loved and accepted for who they are, it feels like there's more love there.
Well, we can talk about it. We can make an agreement. And when you talk to an individual, and I have a family member who at a young age, before he even had sex with the opposite sex, decided to start doing the hormones and went online and got the mentors to help him and completely changed who he was as a young man to take on as a female. The only trouble is that he still has the male hormones, which are now very female, but he has the male brain. He has the counterbalance in his luminosity, and it's not natural. Although in his heart of hearts, he said, as many of the transgender folks will tell you, that this is what they were supposed to do with their life in this lifetime. So that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah, it's a journey.
Yes.
Part of the teaching that you just brought up is the child versus the adult. And that was such a profound training and teaching that I received. I can feel when my child wants to play, but then when my child wants to be in charge, it can be like, oh, I'm not equipped. And so I can feel this fear where the adult then has to step and say, no, it's okay. And I remember having an emotion where I felt fear, and I had to speak to my child and say, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to go away, but you can go outside and play. And I had to kind of speak to my child to let that fear go, because I could say, the adult is here. The adult is in charge.
Right.
And there's such a beautiful presence to that.
Yeah. So this is part of level 1 of the Chuluaqui Quodoushka teachings. We teach about what is in our luminosity, not only the chakras, but we call them the shields, and that how we can consciously move them, and that having our spirit shields more present, because our spirit shields have they do not experience any negativity, where the child from the past of there's been a lot of pain in our past, as well as the adult. So the tonal, everyday expressions of who we are that are in our luminosity carry a dark side as well as a light side, a feminine as well as a masculine side. That's what brings balance to us.
Yeah.
The spirit shields are the opposite gender of who we are, and that brings balance to us.
Yep.
And they are only an expression of the light. And so the more we can listen to that, as well as our elder shield, it will guide us. And so our life can flow. Our life is not meant to be so difficult.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be so sad. We're actually, Great Spirit put us on this planet to grow, to learn, to have pleasure. We make it so difficult. And of course, culture and religion makes it difficult.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
As you broke out of that box, going back to the beginning.
Yes. And still trying to deconstruct from the fear-based constructs that I was given. And that's why the Chuluaqui Quodoushka workshops, I've been to the 1 and the 2,
Yes.
and we plan on attending the 3, is just to relieve that anxiety and just to let that fear and shame go. And one of the most profound teachings I got in the Quodoushka 2 workshop was learning about codependency versus co-empowerment. Oh my goodness, this has probably been the most important thing that I've gone through personally, transformative teaching. And it was simply the fact that when I feel sorry for myself, I'm in a place of victimhood. And so my beloved sweet lady Gail, she wants to help me, so she becomes the rescuer, which then puts our relationship under stress and makes it the persecutor. And I was like, oh, this is the pattern. And I look back at my life and I see, poor me, I'm a victim. Oh, honey, it's okay. Let me rescue you. And then it was like, and then I just feel
This
like
relationship.
yeah, it's, why aren't you just stronger, or whatever. And then it could switch, maybe I feel like I'm the persecutor and she's the, so it's this triangle. And it was so profound for me to have that revelation. And then to take and learn and have the tools to change that to empowerment.
Yes.
Where when I'm feeling being the victim, she's like, let me challenge you. Let me listen to you. Let me challenge you and let me support you in this.
Yes.
And to empower me. And I'm like, wow, that's a better energy. Even though you're kicking my ass right now and I don't like it because I want to be a victim, I felt for me, being a victim gave me this weird, gross, dark power of control. Ooh, if I'm,
clearly.
then my core wound is being unloved. Well, then I can maybe have that. And I was like, oh, that's a dark energy. So
clearly it was.
Your workshop, or the workshop that you helped facilitate, gave me that space to transmute that. So I honor you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's through education. And the lack of education is where we give our power away. It is through education and knowledge, gained knowledge. And these triangles are so simple. And yes, psychology teaches also, and therapy teaches about codependency. There's even CODA 12-step meetings. And to be able to get a simple diagram in an hour teaching, maybe 30-minute teaching, and then for you to take it and then integrate it and understand it. And rather than doing, I'm cutting my nose to spite my face, instead of doing weeks and weeks and months of therapy. But as a therapist, I believe in get down to core, as few sessions as possible, do your work, and then we'll do tune-up sessions because you got to be willing to speak the truth. Even when it hurts. And so you two made an agreement. You and your sweet Gail made an agreement, as my husband and I did, that we are willing to confront each other, willing to challenge each other. And I hated the word confrontation. There was no confrontation small enough that I wasn't willing to run away from. I hated it until I learned that confrontation actually was knowing what I knew, not what I believed in. Because in the word believe is be lie, L-I-E, be in a lie. I don't have to believe it. I have to know it. And so when I knew something, I was willing to stand up for it, which is vitally important in this day and age, to be willing to stand up, even if there are hordes of individuals that are saying, no, that's wrong, to stand up based on fact, based on truth. And so my husband and I made an agreement that we would challenge each other, we would support each other, and we would truly listen. And so oftentimes we'll do what it's called the talking stick method.
Oh, I love that.
And it's very simple. For instance, what did you just hear me say?
So then you hand me the stick and I take it. What I heard you say is you don't like confrontation, but you realize it's important. And then I hand the stick back to you.
And then I would say another few sentences.
Yeah.
And then I would hand it back to you.
Yeah.
And then you would say the next few sentences.
Yeah.
So when you're working with a talking stick, it means something is really important. And I need to talk to you about it now. Are you willing to put down your work, put down whatever you're doing? And this will take about a half hour. And then you would say either, yes, I have time, or I don't have time right now, but I can do it in an hour. And then we agree to that. So as quickly as possible, if somebody presents a talking stick to you.
Yep.
And then for my husband, he handles about 2 sentences, 3 at the most. Because it's not that you're memorizing the words, you're getting the essence and repeating them back.
Yeah. So that I resonate with that.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, hold on.
Right.
We can do one at a time.
Right. Now, I use this method in my marriage practice to teach people how to communicate, because when you get too many topics on the table, it becomes convoluted and you can't resolve anything. So I'll point out, you just brought up 3 topics. What's the first one you want to do? And then I have them work the talking stick until that one topic is resolved and they have an agreement. And then you write it down. And then the next topic. What happens in arguments, it goes from a discussion to an argument because there's too many issues and buttons are getting pushed, and you're not addressing what is really wrong. You're just being triggered. So what this does, a talking stick slows down the communication and it forces you to listen. So if you were to repeat back to me something that I said, I might say to you, thank you. The words you said were accurate. I did say those words, but I didn't say it with the energy you threw at me.
Wow, yeah.
So I'm listening for, did you hear the intent and the energy? And so then I'll say it again and emphasizing a softer energy, or I'm really hurt, and rather than the sarcastic kind of energy. So you have to listen to each other and you have to repeat, and it's most of the time we just want to be heard.
Yep.
The problem will solve itself if we know we've heard, and if we're honest about, it really hurt me when you said that, and then I stuffed it, and then I blew up at you, and then you apologize.
We have to work through that whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Relationship is so important. You have given presence to the masculine and the feminine, and it's not necessarily the gender, but the energy of that, and how important it is to co-create together.
Yes.
And it's just, it's really good when you have someone else to co-create with, where you don't merely have to be out on an island by yourself. And and then when you integrate the sexual component on that, that joy and that bliss, there's so much power there.
The power is the power of the universe that allows you to manifest or create whatever it is that you want in your life. So when individuals, for whatever reason, are single, meaning they don't have, friends with benefits, or they don't have a buddy. When they're single, they can self-pleasure and use that sexual life force energy to plant their seeds, to plant their eggs, to manifest in the universe. And we need to be touched. And we need to be made love to, and we need to be needed and wanted and desired, and we need to be willing to give that as well as receive it. So there's a lot of very lonely people out there who are single, who are sorely hurting, and that's where the sensual massages come in. That's where the oldest profession in the world comes in. And unfortunately, we don't have any more sacred temples because that's illegal also. But there was a time in all cultures where the sexual intimacy needs could be met, because in some cultures, monogamy did not exist. That's why in some of the Native American cultures, whatever teepee the children were at, they were fed and they took the mother's name. They took the woman's last name. They took her lineage because they know who the mother was. They may not have known who the father was because there was not this possessiveness about sexual monogamy. They may live together, and grow and learn, but this having to be, married at the hip. Marriage was originally created in Roman times for the purpose of taxation.
Oh, wow.
It didn't have anything to do with anything spiritual.
Yep.
I mean, their origins.
And probably had nothing to do with romantic love either.
Probably not, because it had to do with taxation and making money.
Yeah.
Think about our marriage license today.
Hmm.
Think about how many licenses we need to have
Yeah.
and paying the government
Yeah.
for the right.
Yeah. For the right to have your relationship.
One thing I would like to say is, though there are the 5 different types of relationships, that the elders have talked about, that monogamy, in the traditional sense of the word, says it is one of the most powerful relationships because it requires us to learn, to grow, and actually, like the phoenix, to let the relationship die and flame into ashes where a new relationship can be birthed from it.
Mm.
And that when 2 people can evolve and grow and challenge and support each other, that they say it requires death and change and rebirth, which is what happens with the seasons.
Yeah.
And it's a reflection of what is in nature. And so it is, by the elders' account, the most powerful relationship where you can learn the most.
Mm. Beautiful.
And it's still a choice as to what is the best relationship at any given point in one's life.
Yeah.
And what are they trying to learn, and what am I trying to teach myself?
Mm. Beautiful. Give presents to your website. Give presents to the Chuluaqui Quodoushka workshops for the listeners that are on a podcast and don't have the visual on the screen.
Okay. So for my website, it is spiritualsexuality.com. spiritualsexuality.com. And you can also contact me with my name, Ina, at spiritualsexuality.com. If you can't remember that, I have a shortened one. It's Ina at Talk to Ina. TalkToina.com.
Yeah.
For the Quodoushka, it is QUOUSHKA.org. Quodoushka.org. And on there you'll see a world calendar where we teach these workshops between Phoenix, New Mexico, Australia, Czechoslovakia, Germany, Italy,
I saw there's
Hawaii.
a Hawaii one. Yeah.
Italy. So you can go online and Quodoushka.org, read about all the different workshops, see the testimonials from people around the world. You can sign up to get on our mailing list for the calendars, and you can also ask any questions. And if you want to find out more about the spiritual shamanic path, it's the Deer Tribe. And it's also known as Deer Tribe Métis Medicine Society, DTMMS.org. And there's information there about the martial arts, about the Red Lodge, about the Quodoushka, the 8 different expressions of our path.
Beautiful. Ina, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, David, this is great. Thank you so much.
At the end of the episode, I like the guest to give presents for the listener. If there's one thing you want the listener and the viewer to take away, what is that one thing?
Stay connected to spirit, whatever that looks like. And it's not the devil made me do it. I mean, truly stay connected to spirit when it comes to who you are as an emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, sexual human being. They are all equally important, and let spirit guide you.
Awesome. Coach, I give you honor and gratitude. Thank you for being such an important part of my journey.
Thank you.
I'm David Marsh, and you've been watching Exploring the Human Journey on YouTube as a video and listening as a podcast. If you would like to help continue the conversation, please consider supporting us by visiting patreon.com, where you can support us on a monthly basis and get extra bonus content. For as little as $1 a month, you can make this show sustainable and help continue spiritual consciousness. You can also help by following us on Facebook and Instagram. For more information about the show, find us online at exploringthehumanjourney.com.